All set. We're going to call the board meeting to order at 6:32. I think it's on. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay. 6:32. Let's do the pledge of allegiance. United States of America. Roll call starting with Vinnie,
Vinnie Cannadella.
Michael Kusa.
Debbie Sherman.
Joe Matisovich.
Dick Tomporowski.
Okay, any amendments to the agenda? Nope, okay. Motion to approve the September 27th regular Board of Education minutes.
Second.
Any questions, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, audience of citizens. Does anybody want to say anything or? No? No? Okay, board correspondence, we have none. And right into the assessment report. I want to thank you all for being here tonight and giving us the report. First, we're limited tonight with board members. Steve will be here, but we're very happy to hear what you have to say.
Very easily can you fall into this rabbit hole, like more questions arise, dig deeper and dig deeper and dig deeper to the point where we just had to walk away for a little bit. And then we started to look in again very recently. So we started off.
Yeah.
Okay, so we started off with the iReady assessments. The iReady assessments last year was the first year of students taking it all year long, except for kindergarten, who starts in the winter. And in front of you, you will see non-cohort data and cohort data, and each has its own purpose and why we do that. What I found extremely interesting is that the students from fall to spring or winter to spring, when you're looking at kindergarten, the growth in school is tremendous. The students are coming in, they are learning at a rapid rate, and they are leaving us in June at grade level. You definitely have some that are below grade level, but for the most part, you're seeing them move throughout the year, which is great. That staff at each of the schools are doing a tremendous job. And then we looked at cohort data from the spring to the fall, and we noticed some major dips. So we reached out to iReady, we reached out to a few people that are very well versed in how iReady assesses their students, and they immediately calmed us down, because when you leave third grade at grade level or above grade level, when you start fourth grade, you are at a different threshold. For example, they start assessing you as a fourth grader, so you should see them going down to an approaching level. You should see that dive when you are going into fourth grade, because you are at a different, they're assessing you at different skills. So when I spoke with the iReady person, she said, if you really want to see what the growth looks like, take a look at scale scores. I'm going to mention scale scores again when I talk about the SATs from the high school. And so I did. I just, at a bird's eye view, there's a lot more to look at for iReady, but comparing, this is everybody who's taken the assessment. So it is somewhat cohort, I guess, in a way. All the students who took iReady in the spring of 2021-22 had a scale score in literacy of 549. In the fall, it was 556. So yes, they might have dipped, but the question is, did they learn enough to be successful in the next grade, right? So there's more digging that needs to happen here, specifically in looking at your scale scores and your percentiles for in the areas where you saw the biggest dips, which was usually your big transitional years. So the percentile, for example, all the students who took this is in a specific grade. This is this is K all the way through ninth grade. Actually, ninth grade didn't take it, so it's going to be K8. Essentially, the percentile was 56 in the spring. In the fall, they were in the 58th percentile. So they actually grew a little bit even in that area. Now it's not, is this the best they could be? No. There's always room for improvement. We're at whatever we look at. Now in math, same thing. The scale score in the spring was 462, and in the fall it was 464. And then in the spring, the percentile was 52. And then in the fall, it was 54. This is not individual classes. This is the entire district at once. And now we can dive in even more, probably a Saturday afternoon, and be able to compare each grade scale score, each grade's percentile specific to the retention over the summer. That is always a concern for just about any school, is that retention. So if I leave second grade and I'm starting third grade at GOES, big transitional year, fifth grade to sixth grade, big transitional year, as well as eighth to ninth grade. There's a lot of things that we can look into, specifically having a rigorous summer program, a take-home program that might be a little bit more engaging for students when they do go home. There's a lot of things that we can work on with the principals as well, and what they think, as well as our math interventionists and reading interventionists and what they think.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because it changed, it's different from my understanding from last spring. From what I was told, the end, like, so as you're taking the test is evolving.
Yeah.
So you're comparing not just like for fourth graders, fourth grade in the fall versus fourth grade in the spring, the test is harder, the expectation is higher, because a fourth grader at the beginning of the year versus the end of the year, there's supposed to be growth. So if you're at grade level, you need to maintain grade level, you need to grow during that year. So it sounded, and I might have misunderstood you, it sounded like if someone went from fourth grade spring to fifth grade fall, the jump's enormous. And that's where I'm confused, because there's no learning happening over the summer. The expectation is a dip. Is iReady saying we expect to have learning growths over the summer period where the bar is higher?
The bar is higher. So that's what we learned today. We reached out to iReady and their publishers, and they shared with us that comparing spring cohort data, spring to fall, is not the way to look at it. When we look at SATs, as well as, I know you're a high school parent, so you understand SATs and scale scores from PSAT to PSAT to SAT, that scale score keeps increasing. So you might meet benchmark or be above benchmark as a freshman, and then you take the PSATs as a sophomore, and all of a sudden, what happened there? Now I'm in the yellow. It depends on where you are in that band. And so it's very similar in that way. It is an adaptive test. It does grow with the student, but you are at a different threshold once you go up another grade. I hope that makes sense. We're definitely going to dive into iReady much deeper and really explain it better. This is, although I'm sure he probably knows a lot more about it than I do, we are learning and I'm growing with the program right now. And this is the first time that we can actually compare spring to fall. So this is where we, and it's a brand new math program. There's a lot of stuff going on. So it's like trying to now figure out exactly where we are with iReady.
Okay, because that does, it makes sense what you're saying.
Right.
Logically, it does not make any sense to expect growth over the summer in any school system that's not educating year round. If you're educating year round, I'd say I'm all with you. But because they get the months off, I don't know how iReady can look educators in the eye and go, this makes perfect sense to expect growth from spring when they stop educating them to fall when they start educating them again. I'm just, because everyone knows, I don't think it's like a myth. I think data-wise knows that there's always going to be a drop. So to have them raise the bar seems foolish in how we might interpret the data, because it looks really bad.
Correct. And I think that's why we jumped in. You're always going to look for that dip from the spring to the fall. And I think that that's why we paused very quickly. First, we were looking at cohort data and we're like, okay, this looks okay. And then we dug in a little bit more and we're like, the fall to the spring data is beautiful. Like the teachers are doing a phenomenal job. And then we looked from spring to fall and we were like, uh-oh, what happened here? And that's when we dived in and we started looking at the system, because it is our first year to be able to do that. So the real good data will be spring to spring. And so we'll be able to watch the students grow, and we'll have that this year, as well as comparing it to see how students are growing on SBAC as well, and comparing those two.
And I think that correlation between SBAC and iReady is going to be critical, not just as we dive into the data now, but in future years, because we want to make sure that the assessment that we're doing 3 times a year through iReady is correlated, is giving us good, accurate measures that's relatable to SBAC as well.
Okay, because I'm just watching the 3+ grade level deficits grow. I don't think it's reasonable to expect children to grow more than a year of academic growth. It's very difficult to do more than that. That's enough for most children. And for those that are behind, to see that number grow and not shrink. I understand iReady is telling us that they're gaming the system and kind of shifting things around, but a 3+ year deficit growing and not growing a little bit is frightening. And if spring, it'll tell us what level of reaction needs to happen. If spring data shows we're still growing our 3+ year deficits, it's not just alarming, it's frightening.
Well, there are several things that we need to look at in terms of the data showed us that there was a greater discrepancy in math versus literacy. And we formed a work team to analyze where we are mathematically to make sure that we're on the right track for that and figure out why that data has decreased in the way that it has, because it is alarming. One thing to keep in mind is that the math curriculum last year was a brand new curriculum. So we needed to take a look at the scope and sequence and the pacing around the math curriculum to make sure that we had the right rigor and the right pacing to support long-term retention of student learning and the ability for students to transfer those skills from one area to another. It's going to take further analysis of that data to work to see where the challenge may be occurring, to see how we can close that gap. And then the other piece to this is SRBI. Do we have a system in place to really support the students that are struggling? We know that we've implemented an SRBI process this year. We're looking at the form of the structures. We know that from the middle school perspective, we need to take a look at the schedule to create more opportunities for SRBI to be done with Fidelity. So we're not done with the tinkering that needs to be done with SRBI, but that's going to be a huge piece to closing the gap for the students that are below grade level.
I did bring Mr. Kusek for the board for your reading pleasure. The scale scores for each grade level and each area that the students are being assessed for this year for iReady that you could take a look at to see how the scale scores do change year to year. So you can take a look at that as well. But I'm sure there'll be a more in-depth report coming once we unravel iReady even a little bit more.
Right. I think the one thing to keep in mind is that this was the first year of iReady. And logically, it makes sense to measure student progress from spring to spring. We wanted to see what it looked like from spring to fall. iReady is telling us that's not the recommended use of looking at the data, but we wanted to look at it anyway, because there is a trend there that is alarming. But I want to see from iReady, is that trend that we saw consistent with all schools that take iReady, or is we need to test us here?
And I just because by spring we might forget this, we really do need to send things home for the students, because my daughter's a kindergartner, she's now a first grader. I don't believe she had any math or reading. I think there was a governor's challenge of reading something over the summer, but other than that, we were supplying supplemental math to keep it fresh. And if our math scores are as challenging as they appear to be, we really have to, across the grade levels, step up our summer work that we sent home.
And part of that could be packets, part of it could be asking students to complete iReady over the summertime, but it is something that we need to take a look at. We've attempted in the past to do small cohorts of supports for students, either through the summer enrichment program, where the students are partly going through fun activities and then after morning doing academic tutorials. we've attempted to do small SRBI type interventions in August. So there's different things we've tried in the past, but nothing really has been a solid success in the past. So we need to look at what we can do during the summertime to not only help the students that do have a dip in retention, but also the students that are below grade level at the end of the school year to try and catch them up in the summer as well.
The next set of.
Yeah, just especially with the math, but we put a lot of time and effort into coming up with a new math program. And with that, the presentation was that the steps were going to be fair and consistent. And now all of a sudden we have an iReady gap, or we test the students harder than you're supposed to. The math was supposed to flow. That's why we started at 12th grade and went down, and it's supposed to overlap and build on it so that we didn't have this gap. So to sit here, and I don't know iReady from Star or whatever, but how, what kind of system is that, oh yeah, we make it harder for the next year, so you're gonna have a gap. That's like me saying, well, my checkbook, I know I'm gonna have a gap, just live with it, you know? It doesn't make sense.
I don't think it's so much of a gap as it is a learning curve, right? So anytime you start a new grade or anytime you're introducing a new skill, you're not really expecting the students to be all the way up here. They're kind of starting, they have the background information, and then they're growing. And then by the next time that if you hit those skills, by the next time they take the assessment, that's when you see the growth. If all the students are coming into 7th grade or 6th grade or 5th grade, knowing everything already, what are we going to teach them, right, Vic? Like, so they're starting with a whole other set of skills now that they have to learn and keep growing with their grade.
Yeah, but the presentation was, the overlap was built in. Is that when I'm in 4th grade, I'm at this level. When I go into 5th grade, there's an overlap so that it's a refresher for the first 2 weeks. So I don't know when we're being tested, but the first 2 weeks is letting you get caught over the lapse of the summer. And that was the pitch of the system. And it sounds like in one certain grade level that either iReady has changed the rules, which I believe that's probably what it is. I think that's what you're saying. Or we're missing between the 4th grade teacher and the 5th grade teacher. They're not marrying the two things together. There shouldn't be a gap based on what we paid for.
Well, I think one of the things that we need to remember is that the iReady assessment is a unique independent assessment that is not correlated at all to our math curriculum. There are two different pieces of, one is content curriculum and the other is assessment off of different standards. There's not going to be a direct overlap between the two. Second is what we're saying is that a 3rd grade student that is at grade level at the end of 3rd grade theoretically should be coming into 4th grade below 4th grade standards. Because the 4th grade assessment is looking at what a student should know being able to do at the end of 4th grade. So theoretically, you would see in that trend that we look at, every student that ends 3rd grade at grade level in the fall, according to the percentage that we showed, should be one slide to the right. They should be then below grade level. So a student that's 2 grades above in 4th grade should be starting 5th grade 1 grade above. And a student that's 1 grade above should be starting now at grade level. Student that's at grade level would be below 1 grade below. What we're seeing in some cases, we have to look at the data further, is why there is a 2 gap in the data that's showing us. It looks like there's a larger slide than we would be expecting to see there. But part of that is, once again, to talk to iReady to see, is that unique to us here, or is that something that's inherent within their assessment that all schools would be seeing if they look at that analysis in the same way?
And I guess the only thing that one of the last meetings Mike said is that as we continue to keep dropping behind, this is a drop behind presentation to me, is that by the time they get out of high school, they should be like, 6 grades behind. They're never gaining the loss. And this iReady is like another clink in the armor that as a board, you can't figure out what's going on.
The interesting piece of the data that we see is from the fall to the spring from last year, there's tremendous growth in students across the board. You can see that students not only just went up 1 grade level, but went over, in some cases, 2 grade levels. So the growth took place over the course of the year from fall to the spring. The question is, what's the data from the fall telling us compared to the spring data? That's the question we're asking already. It could be that that data that we're looking at now from the fall, from the spring to the fall, is actually not as meaningful as the growth that we saw from fall to spring last year, which is what really is indicating that student growth took place. And now what we need to see is, what does that growth look like in the winter time this year and then the spring, and then correlate the spring to spring next year, and also do a correlation between this assessment already and SBAC, because that's going to be a true tell to see if that's providing an indicator. I-READY is telling us the students are here, but SBAC is telling us that our students are down here. And then the I-READY assessment or the SBAC assessment, one of the two is not giving us an accurate measure where we really are with our students. The other piece to this, going back to the curriculum, is our scope and sequence and our pacing correct? So in other words, are we covering too much material and not going deep enough and rigorous enough so that students are able to transfer those skills from one to another? And that's why year one is always an implementation year. And now we've got to go back and analyze how did it work and what do we need to adjust so that we get the best learning out of our students possible.
So the next set of data is the NGSS testing, that's your science assessment that is taken in grades 5, grades 8, and grades 11. And what I looked at here was how we grew before COVID and then after COVID, and if we are kind of closing that gap from where we were. And you'll see that in grade 5 and 8, our levels 1 and 2s did drop, meaning that our 4s and 3s and 4s increased, but not at the high school level. So the question then is why? And there was a lot of movement in terms of the sequencing of courses. So there's always implementation dips when we do make certain changes. And there was a disturbance in the sequence specifically for your juniors, who are currently juniors now, were juniors last year, for the freshmen and sophomores. They had to, if they took integrated and then they didn't take integrated and then they were in bio and they were mixing them all up. So that could have been the reason for that. So we'll be watching that this year to see where we are with our NGSS for 11th grade this year. But I would predict that we'll be back up there. Okay. Smarter balance. Another big one. It's another one that we looked at for cohort and non-cohort data. And I think that overall, when I like cohort data, I like to compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Where we are seeing our dip is at the middle school level in both literacy and numeracy. So our math program just completed their first year of implementation, and you should really give that a couple of years to see the long-lasting effects of that. For literacy, again, we're going back to the science of reading. So we'll see some changes in there as well. But what I find most interesting is the middle school is working on their schedules to really be able to strengthen their intervention program with our students and making it more fluid and be able to intervene at a more rapid and more at a rate where you can progress monitor a little bit better. And we'll also be putting together a math task force where we're looking at diving into all of our math scores and aligning it with our curriculum to see, are we going to be able to find specific gaps through the testing and what we need to beef up in our curriculum. Any questions?
I do. I have a question. So 6th grade literacy, I'm sorry, 5th grade literacy. We have for 2021, we have,
I'm sorry, Deb, what page are you on? I don't know if you're on cohort or
Page
not.
44.
44.
Thank you.
So level 4 and level 3, we're at like 77%. We have 14, 17, 24% of the kids at the lower levels. And then you go to the sixth grade, we only have 23 and 31, and our numbers 26.8 and 18.1 of the kids that are below. I mean, where are we going and why are we dropping so dramatically from
So
those
this right
grade
now,
levels?
what you're looking at is non-cohort data, so it's all a different set of students. But that doesn't take away from our concern with the middle school and the way the students are growing there. And a lot of attention is going to be put there, not only on the curriculum and pacing guides, and the math task force is going to be starting at the middle school and then heading up and down, as opposed to going 12 to kindergarten or kindergarten up. So we're going to be starting in the middle and hopefully get some answers. But the cohort data starts on page
50.
Starts one page earlier, but the fifth grade and sixth grade is.
No, 50.
So, okay.
That's not bad. 49. Oh, 49, sorry.
49, yeah.
It's
So
called-
you'll see though, like, you're right. And I'm sure Sylvia can speak to it as well, of the readiness of students, as well as how the curriculum is going and the enrollment and how the demographics are changing as well at the middle school. So more so than any of the other schools in our district right now. And there's something to be said there, right? So I think that that's where we have to spend some time in really understanding what is it exactly that's happening. Is it instructional practices? Is it, the curriculum and the pacing? Again, math is brand new there as well,
We're on literacy.
and literacy.
So we should have a pretty strong literacy program. We haven't changed that, so
Well, literacy in the curriculum is in phase 1. We're going to be doing a lot of fact gathering there as well. Now, you know that K5 is going to, well, K3 for sure, possibly K5 will be implementing a new program as Readers Workshop is out. The state is like, no. And we're now looking at 5 programs following the science of reading. So eventually that will trickle up to the middle school and will have its effects, because it will have a domino effect. But right now, we're going to be collecting a lot of information of exactly what and how literacy is being taught at the middle school.
And going back to Dorothy's point, the question is it a curriculum issue, is it an instruction issue, or is it a combination of both?
yep. Well, it does, but we still have in sixth grade, we still have 26.8 and 18.1 kids that are at level 2 and level 1. So it's, I'm not looking at the cohort. I'm saying purely we have 30, 44.9% of our sixth grade class is below the level where they're supposed to be. Yeah, so that, as a board member, that's kind of upsetting, so.
And I think that's the analysis that we need to do, to take a look at the correlation between that and iReady, to take a look at, do the students perform similar between those two, and look at the use of iReady, the tools itself. At the lower levels, because of scheduling, we're able to get the students more on the self-paced tutorials of iReady, where the students are able to engage in the skills that they need to continue growing in. And we need to take a look at how we can use that more with fidelity at the middle school. And then going back to the question, is it the curriculum, is it instruction, is a combination of both? Where do the challenges come into? Because we can see, especially in the iReady data as well, in correlation to this, that there is a dip in achievement at the middle school level in both literacy and math.
It also applies to fourth grade and fifth grade, according to the SBAC. Non-cohort, 38.6% of our fourth graders are below. So it's not just at the middle school, it's fourth, fifth, and then moves on from that point, so.
The next set of data, I don't think it was ever presented to the board before, is our AP testing. That's our advanced placement. The high school has a very good program. We offer a lot of courses for students to get a jump on some college credits. Essentially, where you want to be is at least a 3, more so a 4 or a 5 for that credit to transfer, right? So your technical schools will take a 3. Your universities want to see at least a 4 for those credits to transfer over. So again, I mentioned this in the beginning about that rabbit hole, right? So if you notice the last 4 years, the average scores for the first time last spring, the average score fell below the 3. Now, what's interesting about Oxford Public Schools, which I'm very fond of, is that students can self-select to go to AP courses. First, you start with your teacher, a teacher refers you or recommends you to take the higher level courses, but there is a time where parents can override that recommendation and put their students and their children into those AP courses as well. So now I'm starting to think, okay, so how many in 2022 were overrides? We had some turnover with staff at the high school. So how many of the courses that were taught with the new teachers, or were they fully AP trained, et cetera. So I'm kind of like thinking, all right, what happened in 2022 with our AP scores, which usually they are much higher than 3. And then I'm thinking it would probably be better if we even looked at frequencies. How often are we hitting that 5? How often are we hitting that 4? That might be a better set of data to look at. But for the most part, we are offering more courses for college credits than less. I'm hoping that we can build our ECE program over there. It's just different qualifications for the teachers to do so. And that's your advanced placement. So teachers look at it from the lens of how they're performing in the prerequisite courses, right? They want to see at least a certain percentage. Are they doing their homework? Are they studying? Are they putting forth that effort? But then you might have a course like AP Computer Science or AP Stats or AP Psychology, where the student has that motivation or is very excited about that. So there's something to be said about that growth mindset, that they're going to go in and be very excited about that course and actually succeed at that level. It also opens it up for students that might not have had honors courses or classes at that rigorous level, an opportunity to go in and give it a try. Some students, not many, take the AP course and then do not take the AP test. So those are all pieces and percentages that I would want to look into. So I guess I'm just kind of thinking out loud, what would I want to look at next if I was thinking about AP? And those were all the things that we would probably want to look at. Correct. They have to take a final instead of the AP test, because I'm sure Mr. Hibbert, policies might change, but in AP courses, if you take the AP test, you are not taking the final in that class. That is kind of your final. And you're doing other kinds of projects and performance-based performance tasks and things to that nature, but they do not need to come back and take the final, because their final is the AP test. So students that do not take the AP test, which I think it's $89 now for a parent to pay to take that test, but it's also 3 college credits if you get a 3, 4, or 5, right? I mean, it's still a bargain, especially with the college prices as they're going up. So, so they have to take the final, and then that affects their grade. Now, there's a benefit to students when they're, because the way the point scale goes for your GPA at the high school level to take an AP course, where a CP class is 1, I'm sure I could call on Mr. Hibbert on this one. I believe AP courses is a 1.5. So a B in a AP course is better than an A in a CP class when you're talking about your GPA. And that stuff matters when you're applying to colleges and things like that, or trying to get scholarships. But Vic, if you weren't prepared for that class, and what if you were so motivated, you excelled in that class, but if you didn't, and you didn't pass the test at the end, you wouldn't be a shuttle pilot anyways. So there's always that assessment at the end, whether you're going to get the credits. The credits are not a given, right? The kids have to earn it and get to that level. So that would be great to look in to see how many overrides actually achieved the 3, 4, or 5. How many of the overrides got a 2 or a 1? That'll be very interesting to see. So that's what I mean. You go into that rabbit hole.
And some school districts have strict, unless you are allowed in by the school, there's no override. Other school districts have more wide open. It's all a matter of, as you said, policy. What is it going to allow? What the exemptions do you want? There is something to be said to allow students that say, you know what, I might not have been placed in that school by a teacher, but I feel like I'm ready. I want to give that a chance, because high school is about growth. And it's about expanding what you think that you can do. And if students, you know, that course, I want to give it a try. There's something to be said about giving that students an opportunity to push beyond what their comfort zone is, to try something new and expand what their knowledge base is. Even if you might not get a 4 or 5 at AP, there's value add in going through that experience and giving it a shot, because they are still learning at a college level course, and they're growing through that experience, even if it has a negative impact on our scores.
Hey, Vic. Vic, can you talk into the microphone? Because people are having a hard time. You gotta make sure your button's up.
I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
Okay, but anyway, thank you.
So I have a question on the advanced placements. Do we have any idea what happened between 2019 and 2022 that the scores changed so dramatically? And we actually have, in some of them, we have more kids taking the exams back then than we do now, and the scores are down. So
The price did increase for the assessments as well. I just want to go back to my notes here.
So you mean less kids are taking them now because of the cost?
Well, they could, I mean, we do hear, well, I'm sure Mr. Schuman heard it, and I'm sure Mr. Hibbert will hear it as well. The price increase was definitely something that we hear about a lot, especially if your student is taking 2 or 3 or 4 AP assessments.
But what I'm actually looking at are the scores, mean scores. If you look at the mean scores in 2019, calculus, that was 3.23. Computer science, 3.6. We were at a 1 for 2022,
There's only one person who took that test though.
but it was a 1.
Yeah.
I'm curious why it went for the number of exams, went from a 15 in 2019 for computer science down to a 1. Is it,
That could be the call.
do we change the program? Is the interest just not there?
It didn't run, and it was an online opportunity for a student. So that might, that's a very good point. Looking at the number of tests, how many of the AP courses ran as well, that might be an indication. So I'm glad that was brought up. So that's what I mean when you could go down that rabbit hole, like what to explain these scores. And it depends on how long the courses are. We added quite a few in the last few years. So it takes a while to build the program, to tweak the curriculum, make sure College Board has everything approved. Did the teacher get the proper training through College Board? There's a lot of things that can happen to explain that. I could spend all day. I could spend all day. Okay.
How much are the tests?
What's that?
How much are the tests to take, you know?
I want to say $89.
It's a standardized test, everyone in each country can take, kind of like SAT in a
College
way.
Board, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't want to guess, but I
That's
believe
okay.
it was 89.
So just general, I mean, sorry, I'm late, by the way, but so we offer these courses over time. It's fluid how many people take it, but it's on a decline generally. But for the most part, most of them in 2022 ended up with around a 3, which would say qualify with a B-, C+ or a C. A few of them are slightly under, which would indicate like a C-. I'm just gauging, right? That's how I read this. So we're kind of like, some of them are coming down. We're trying to get to a place where you want most people to be, the mean to be around a 4. Is that what's our target?
So your target should be, it depends, right? So a 3, those college credits will transfer at guaranteed for technical schools and community colleges.
Okay.
Universities want the 4 or the 5, and even then they might not accept those credits and say, well, this is an elective instead. They prefer the ECE courses. But to be an ECE certified teacher, you need a master's degree in that course and get certified through UConn. To be able to teach, and then it gets audited by UConn. And that's not an assessment, it's a portfolio usually, and things like that that you have to do. But it is increasingly more difficult to find teachers that have a master's degree in their content level in order to.
Do we have any here?
Yes, we do. We have
Like-
ECE, we have UConn and world language. We have an ECE language arts teacher, but that course didn't run. And then we also have Project Lead the Way, which is another set through. We have a lot of other courses that are competing with AP. Whoever said that it is on the decline, that's on the decline across the country as well, because kids would prefer the ECE courses or our accounting courses, that we go through post now, Anthony. I think your accounting classes go through post where you get those credits through there. And then you have your project leads away courses that are going through the University of New Haven. So, and those are embedded. It's not a cutoff assessment like the
Right.
AP tests.
I manage the ECE at Sacred Heart. We have, it's dual enrollment at Sacred Heart, but it's a similar thing. And it is easier for students because you're taking a course, you're earning a grade and you get credits for the grade. You don't have to pass an exam
And it transfers.
more easily
More
in most cases because it's coming from an accredited college. You're right, there are some hurdles, but they do vary school to school.
Right.
In terms of discipline and what masters you need and that kind of stuff. But it is easier for students and in a lot of cases, it's still only $100, $150 to take the entire course, but you're earning the credit without having to pass one exam at the end, which kind of sucks.
So is the AP really becoming a thing of the past in a sense? It's not, no longer competitive, the only game in town. There's an easier path and more predictable path.
It's not the only game.
Definitely.
It's not the way it used to be.
Yeah, it was.
It was the
Right?
gold
That
standard,
was
right?
the only way to do it.
Right, for a long time, that was the gold standard. If you wanted to leave high school and get college credit, leave in high school with your diploma, you go for AP. But that's not only what mechanism to do now. The question is, for the students that didn't do as well in AP, what can we do to strengthen that so that the students that do go through the AP experience do end up with a score that does give them college credits? They've gone through a valuable experience and to provide the end of that. Question is, why are those scores not where they need to be?
It ties into a lot of other sports. You could jump all of this.
I believe this is the first time we're even talking about AP and the
Yeah.
college, but it'd be interesting to look at all the college credit courses that we have, because as the state graduation requirements are being more flexible and our partnerships could build from our local schools, kids are going to have more opportunity to earn college credit. And that's why I believe you're going to see less and less of the AP and a lot more different avenues to earn those credits, which helps out parents tremendously. You have to pay tuition. Okay, last but not least is our SATs. And when we're looking at the non-cohort data, kind of, well, I think you can see for yourself. So what I was really interested in looking at, that we made some gains in 2019, in 2021, we were kind of growing. I wanted to see what, are we going to be able to go back to when we were at our highest levels? And we did take a dip in non-cohort data. Now, when we're looking at our cohort data, and this is where the scale scores are extremely important as well, you'll notice that from, so that's our page 62, when we're comparing the same students from the fall 2019 to spring 21 to the fall 21 to spring 22, that their scale scores are growing. Again, just like in iReady, the benchmark changes, the scale changes. So in a nutshell, our students are growing, they're just not growing fast enough to be able to get to that level necessary to meet the benchmark at the SAT level. Pretty much what the data is saying.
So do they scale over the course of the year if you take it in the fall and the spring?
So we're comparing this, they take the SAT once. In 9th grade, there's the PSAT 9, and they're taking it tomorrow. The PSAT 9, then they have the PSAT 10. Then as juniors, they take the regular PSAT, and then in the spring of junior year, they take the SAT. So it's different kind of test or same types of questions, same kind of environment that you're taking the assessment in, except now it's all online. And then it raises the bar every single time. So when we're looking at their scale scores, they are growing in every area across between all of those assessments. They just need to grow faster. And that's when we could talk about not only the scope and sequence, because it looks like we cover a lot, but maybe not depth, and maybe the rigor piece is missing when we're talking about some of these deficits.
Okay, because it would be nice to, at least from every time we get the report, that the way that these tests operate stays consistent. Because I feel that the information that I absorbed last year versus this year has greatly altered. For example, a fourth grader sounds like the test is what they should be at the end of the year, which doesn't make it sound like if I'm taking the iReady test, fall, winter, spring, it's not scaling where I should be in the fall of fourth grade, the winter of fourth grade, and the spring of fourth grade, to show that at that moment in time, my growth is reasonable for what I'm supposed to have. It sounds like at the beginning of fourth grade, I'm tested on what I should know at the end, which is why we catch up by the end of the year, but that we fall way behind at the beginning because we're being tested on things we technically don't know. As you indicated, you said that, well, if they know all of fourth grade, then what are we going to teach them in fourth grade? So it sounds like we're testing them on things, but it's scaling, but it's not scaling. And I'm hearing information and I'm processing it, and what I hear doesn't make any sense. And if I'm a parent that's just coming off the street hearing this, I would be going, what is going on? Is my child being tested for end of year results at the beginning of the year? What's scaling? What do you mean? And what are they being tested on fifth grade end of year, at the end of the year? Like, where is this scaling to? So if you start at the end of the year, fourth grade in fall, what does that test look like in the spring? And it'd be nice if whatever the answer is, it just holds firm from year to year.
So I can't, that's just what, I can't say if what you're sharing with me right now is completely accurate. I think this is Dr. Miller's.
I'm
understanding
sharing
as
back to
well.
you what I'm hearing.
But I
And
think
And that's what we're trying to probe with.
we're
iReady to
looking
get
for
it.
an opportunity to dive in and to really truly understand what those scores mean. What does the growth scale mean? Again, this is our first year looking at it. So looking at it from spring to fall made our brains go, what just happened? And so now we're digging in even deeper. And we're going, and we'll put another report together specific on iReady to really explain exactly what you're saying, not in all the jargon, but like, this is how the test assesses our students. This is what we should be able to expect from our students from over the summer, as well as look at other districts that are using the assessment to see what their data looks like from spring to fall and what they're doing to offset this potential dip.
Right, and I want to go back to, if you look at the data in the assessment report that looks at fall to spring, that's what measures academic growth over the course of the year. That for me is the data that I'm really focusing on right now, because what that's telling us is that from the beginning of last year to the end of last year, for pretty much every single grade level, and primarily at the elementary school level, the students made, in some cases, 1 to 2 years of growth in that year. So they went from low to above, mid ag grade level to 2 grades above. They had tremendous growth, and that's what we want to see in the students. What the data is telling us from the spring to the fall, that's what we need to analyze it. That's the answer to trying to get from iReady. But really focus right now on the fall to spring, because that's really what's telling us from last year, that the students made tremendous growth within that assessment. It told us the students grew significantly from the start of the year to the end of the year.
I think it's also important to understand, and I keep going back to fourth grade, I pick any grade, it doesn't matter. You need to understand what is the scale for the fall of a fourth grader versus winter versus spring. So if you're saying, I made all this growth, if you don't know what the scale is, what's the scale doing during that time period? What is the fall really measuring? And is that like the start of a fourth grader? Is it the end goal? And we just keep testing better because we've taught the material that should be learned over the course of the year. Because if they're moving the goalpost each time you're taking it, you need to understand that. Because just because you say, I made 2 years of growth from fall to spring, you don't know what those goals, what type of student are you testing? And if the answer is, we want fall to spring to be good, I want them all to be good. I want them to be moving in the direction where they're closing gaps. But if I don't know what the goal of, what are they actually testing, and what type of a student are they evaluating, where it's like, you're at grade level, what does that mean? And if I don't know what it means in the fall versus the winter versus the spring, any data you give me is suspect, where I go, am I getting excited because they're 3+ grade levels behind? Or is that normal? Because I don't know. And if I don't know, and I'm getting answers that it sounds like you need more information,
Yes,
we would love to
that,
get that, because when you give us that data, it then makes it meaningful.
right. We know what the meaning was from fall to the spring. We know that that is showing us by the data that students make growth over the course of the year. That we know. The question is the validity in what the data is telling us from the spring to the fall, what that fall benchmark is telling us compared to the end of the year spring data. That's what we don't know. That's what we're going to work on already. That will provide that to you. And
And
is
I
the,
do
is,
have the scale score.
right. And if the data that we're seeing is that unique to us here, or if we look at every single iReady school district in the country, do they have the same correlated data that we do? Is it unique to us, or is that something that's standard within the assessment itself that you'd see that dip from the spring to the fall? That's the question that we're trying to get into from iReady.
Is that possible for the other testing too, like SBAC? That's a state test, SBAC, right?
SBAC is the state assessment.
Is there comparison data for other schools and other districts in the state?
Yes, yes, yeah.
I'd be curious to see that too, just to see,
Yeah.
if people are seeing the same struggles, the same concerns we are. Obviously, with everything that's going on in the last couple of years, I would expect to see some variation there, but I would love to know that it's not, terribly dissimilar here than it is in other places.
You can go on Ed Sites and you can look it up. It'll be there. It's a very helpful page. Anybody else?
I think just for face value wise, I'm not pleased about this. I was looking at some old reports back from 2019, in September, that showed our SAT growth was supposed to be in math around 520 projected growth and 560. And that was for the class of 2020, and projected growth for 2021 to 560. And from what I'm seeing in these SAT math model scores in ERW, I mean, they're well below the expectation that was put forward in 2019. Now, I can give the whole COVID trend, because I think everybody was in the same boat with that. But I'd be curious also to know about the summer depression that comes off with this iReady. I'd like to see if there is more school models like that. I mean, I wouldn't even, if that was the case, I wouldn't even have wasted doing this report until I saw some meat on the bone sometime in winter time. I mean, if that's the case. I don't know if Power School, if the regular grades support what the data is seeing in iReady, but I'd like to see a comparison among that. And and just my thoughts taking in the whole AP testing. I understand about feeling good, but I agree with Vic in the sense that I don't believe in setting kids up for failure and disappointment either. And, it's one thing to say you felt like you were taking a good class, but when a kid comes out of there and they're expecting to possibly transfer credits to college, that's a disappointment too. So I don't understand, I understand the whole social emotional learning side of it, but in those classes there, and I know there's different avenues that they can go get these credits now, but I think we need to take a hard look evaluation either through policy or through other avenues. If we're investing, I think we need to get back to the basics of teaching and get back to the basics of what works, what's good models. I'm not in the time or have the patience to reinvent the wheel. It's frustrating. And my kids are going to be a senior, and do I feel that they're ready for college at this point from the Oxford school system? No. And I'm disappointed. And as a parent, I'm a little emotional about that, because that's something I could have made choices differently as a parent. So I just, we're all here this for the kids, and I just want to see things improve score-wise and curriculum-wise and educational-wise. And at this point, I'm looking at stuff saying, I'm here and been on this board for close to 3 years now, and I just keep hearing the same dissertation through, and that's why I brought this back in 2018. I'm disappointed.
Is there a plan? So I've heard the data across, what was it? iReady, SBAC, NGSS, PSAT, SAT, AP, and I mean, none of the trends are looking good, and they're all, the only thing that's positive is that they're consistent in the message that we are going in the wrong direction, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. So we got that. We got 64 pages telling us that our scores are trending in the wrong direction. However you want to look at it, going whether we had, you know, student influx at the middle school, or we had summer, you know, dips, consistently across the board, we are struggling academically. After 64 pages, okay, what's the plan? Is that coming in another meeting? Is that another presentation where we get this is how we're going to course correct? Because we're just saying we'd like smarter kids so our test scores look better. That's not the answer in saying we just want the kids to be taller. We have a responsibility as a board, we have a responsibility as a district that there needs to be an intervention. There needs to be something that starts tipping it. So I'm curious to know, is there a plan, and is there, if this isn't the meeting to hear the plan, I'd love to know when we're gonna get it.
I mean, a few things with that. One, we knew going into the start of the school year, we knew last year that our SRBI model was not effective, especially at the secondary level, to support the students that were below grade level that needed those interventions. So we did a lot of work on SRBI. So that is to address the students that are below grade level that need those targeted interventions. We also know that the scheduling element, you know, when you take a look at the middle school and high school, we're trying to shore up the scheduling so that it is better efficient and more adequately meets where we need to provide those interventions. We've also taken a look at, especially at Great Oak, how the students were scheduled at the elementary school level to get the most interventions possible from SRBI and special education perspective. So SRBI is a big area that we need to focus on for that. And then beyond that, overall, it's a question of curriculum from a math perspective. We also knew that the scores in math had gone down, and that was a big area of concern for us. So we've looked at we've put together a math task force to study mathematically K-12, why the scores are not showing the growth that we need to see in math. We know that's an area of focus. And then collectively across the board, it becomes a question of, is it a curricular issue? Is the curriculum at any particular level what's causing the dip in student learning? Is it an instruction issue? Do we need to take a look at the pedagogy that our teachers are doing some professional learning that we need to provide teachers on both the curriculum and instructional practices? Are there other elements that we need to take a look at? Is it, you know, as we dive into the data further, are cohorts of students with teacher A having different results than teacher B? So there's a lot of things that we need to continue to analyze to see what the root cause for those dips could be. And going back into our instructional practices, you know, the data for I-rating, especially at the primary level, shows that there was tremendous growth from fall to spring. I don't want us to move away from that. That shows that we were doing something right at the elementary school level. How do we lean into that and see the same type of growth across the board beyond just the primary level? Because that use of I-rating was giving us some positive gains there, and the data showed us that. The question is, how do we make that long-term across the board, across the entire district?
Dr. Miller, I think it would be very prudent of us as well to answer or speak to Joe's concerns about career and college preparedness. We do track, there is a company that tracks our students. Well over 75 to 80% of our students do go to a four-year college, and they stay there when they get there, and they're pretty successful. And we're talking well over a 90% rate. And so it works.
I would like to venture and say I disagree based on this report that it's working.
Right. I was only speaking to students going to college and being successful when they're there.
I think that if our students could demonstrate greater success in the assessment that we have here, we'd see even greater success when the students do get to college. The question is, how do we improve what you're seeing in front of you tonight?
And is there a percentage of our students that leave us, go to college, and have to take remedial math classes because they cannot keep up with the rigor of a college math class, which is pretty sad. That I think that number is pretty significant. I know of at least 10 kids that graduated with Amy that had to take remedial math classes because they could not pass their regular math classes to get into the college classes. So I find that to be really upsetting.
And I also like to add, I don't want to paint with a broad brush. I know we're doing some good things here. It's just, I'm just frustrated in the sense that I always, my own personality and my own personal being, I want to do more. I always want to grow. I always want to do better. And I carry that with me sitting on this board. And I want our district to do better. I want our teachers to do better. I want our kids to do better. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm being a negative Nelly up here. It's just that my expectations, looking at stuff and is to do better, to grow.
Joe, I think we're all agreeing with you, but I do think that the ultimate goal, even with our strategic operating plan, is to ensure that our students are college and career ready. So looking at our students post senior year, where did they go? Did they have to take remedial courses? I do believe they keep track of that as well through
No.
clearinghouse. I have to look into that, but they do keep track. There is a company that keeps track of students. So these might be things that we can look at as well, like overall, if we're looking at the whole child, the whole education, how are once they
I'd also like to say that we have a brand new high school administration now, and obviously the principal of the high school is here today. I think he's hearing the concerns that you have here. I think he's seeing this data also for the first time in the assessment report. And I know that he has a vision for the high school that far exceeds what you see in front of you. So I'd like to give him at least a day or two to come up with a plan of action and how he's planning to address that with Mr. Kubasek. And I have high confidence that the two of them have already begun to steer the ship in a different direction. And some of it's policy related in terms of students being enrolled in specific courses. Others professional learning, it's department time, it's how the teachers are working together, it's the curriculum, and it's the vision of how all that gets put together. So I need to give him and his administration, his team, some time to really get their heads and their arms wrapped around putting a plan of action to address some of these concerns that you're raising tonight.
I think as a board, our biggest issue is that we want to see improvement. We are here to support everyone to make that happen. And if you need something, we're here, but we can't do it in a void. So we get this great report, but it doesn't make sense. It's not making sense to us the way it was explained before. And we're sitting here saying, what do we do? And how do we fix it? And if you need something, let us know. We will do what we can, but we can't do this without everybody having a buy-in and knowing that, we're not the big bad guys that are sitting up here making rotten decisions. We are here to help. And if we don't know what you guys need from us, or the parents, more importantly, the parents don't know what they need to do for their kids, because I don't think any of this stuff is on Power School. I don't think any of the parents know.
None of the children have it. I looked for my son and my daughter, and I couldn't find any of the results that were in this packet pushed at the Power School level.
So the point is, let's figure out a plan. Let's make something that works. Let's make something that we're not sitting here next year saying, but it's not supposed to be fall, spring. It's supposed to be this and this. Let's make a plan. Let's make sure that we all understand it, and let's do what we need to do for the kids. Anybody else have anything?
For the scores to be on Power School, that's something Jim Lexinger is working on, and making sure that PSATs, SATs, SBAC, that they're all going to be listed on there. There is a place on there for that, and I know he's currently working on it.
I think the tab is just not there. Like,
Is that
there's-
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that that's something that he is working on.
And if anyone has anyone that they know that is involved with the Woodbridge, Bethany school system, you might want to ask them what they're doing, because their kids are soaring. So maybe it takes some PD to have to send some people down there. Anybody wants to look at their scores, I brought it with me. They're phenomenal scores. And I know it's not all about scores, but this is what we want. This is what we expect at some point to get to. So if you got any connections with that district, check them out and see what they can help you with, because they're doing something different. Anybody else on the assessment report? No?
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
I am leaving these iReady diagnostic scale score placement tables here for you guys. I made 10 copies.
Thank
So if
you.
you wanted to take a closer look at them, that's for iReady.
And I'll make sure the other board members get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item. Approval of collective bargaining agreements. Let's see, I'm gonna make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the proposed collective bargaining agreement between the Oxford Board of Education and AFSCME Local 1303-14 413, covering the period from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2024, and to invite into the session Dr. Miller.
Second.
And before we close to executive session, we're gonna be going in and out of executive session. I'm gonna recommend that we stop the live stream at this point and just, so that Alex can go home. So we can
Yeah,
go back and forth
that's
for the
fine.
next rest of the
That's
meeting.
fine. Good night, Karen.
Yeah, as everyone